Hi, welcome to my week 2 presentation on my growth mindset plan. So, as a high school Spanish teacher, I really feel like the ability to know that it's okay to fail, it's okay to not be perfect, is probably the most important thing I could ever teach them. And that's something well before I've heard of Carol Dweck, it's just been within my being. So, for me, it's easy to understand why growth mindset is so important because it's what's enabled me to overcome challenges, right? As a young student myself, I was in a very poor area. We weren't being taught much, and so I had this feeling like I was really, really intelligent. I was being told I was so smart. But then when I went outside of my little bubble and found that I wasn't matching up with other peers, I started to immediately see that I had a really fixed mindset because of the kind of praise I was being given as a kid. And it took a lot for me to change that mindset. So, junior year, I actually went to three high schools. I was a little bit like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, trying to find the one that was just right. And it really, until I succeeded in that third school, it wasn't until I changed my mindset. My first history test I was given, and I always had like 106% because if you just wrote a lot, he would give you check plus plus. So I would just write a lot. And then I applied that same theory at the college prep school that I got a scholarship to go. And the teacher, who was also my admission counselor, who almost didn't let me in, threw the blue book down on my desk in front of all of my new classmates and says, "Son, do you know what a thesis is?" I was completely embarrassed. I felt like a complete failure. Um, but I had invested too much in getting there. And so I wasn't willing to let it go. So that's when I instantly realized deep down I had a growth mindset because I went to work and I ended up taking the hardest teachers my last year of high school to sort of make up for all of the time I wasn't at this new school. And I used it as an opportunity. I could have immediately shut down. I could have went home. I could have said, "Mom, just put me back in the public school and let me be with all of my friends." And I wouldn't be where I am today had I done that. So I, more than anyone, understand the power of yet and the power of growth mindset. And so ultimately, what Carol Dweck tells us is that there's sort of four things that we need to think about, four domains, right? And the first one is you need to learn how to hear your fixed mindset voice because even if you claim you are the king or queen of growth mindset, the reality is you're going to have moments of weakness or we're a product of our environment. We all grew up being told by our parents that we were the best and we were so beautiful and so talented, uh, and and that always sends mixed messages. So even someone who has the best of intentions in being growth mindset is going to hear a fixed mindset voice, and they need to be aware of that because if you don't recognize that you have a choice, and it's really in the choice, right, that matters. And so every time we hear that I can't, right, whether it's in the gym and we can't run an extra mile or we can't do another push up, you need to recognize that you have a choice in that. If we're looking at a test or a math problem, we need to help our kids understand that sometimes their brain's going to tell them they can't, and they have the choice, right? Their brain and their mind is a tool that they have choice over, and we need to prep them on how to talk positively to themselves because I think we all, and I know myself as an athlete, always had sort of a negative talk to myself, right? If I struck out, if I didn't win the game, um, I needed to learn how to treat myself better. And through positive self talk and teaching them with the positive praises you can give them that are part of the growth mindset, that's important. I know when I read Angela Lee Duckworth's Grit, that was the first time that it really hit me because on one of her pages, it actually listed the phrases that the eighth graders in the study were being told in the growth mindset cohort versus the fixed mindset. And even though I would believe that I'm truly growth mindset, when I looked at the fixed mindset phrases, I knew I, as a teacher, had been using them. So it really helped me to hear my fixed mindset, recognize that I have a choice, and then start to take back that by using the more positive growth mindset phrases and voice. And then ultimately, we got to take that growth mindset action. It's one thing to recognize and know, but it's another thing to then do something with that. And I think that's where a lot of us struggle. I know a lot of people, whether it be with their weight, with exercise, sometimes we know what we want, but when the choice is made, uh, we either turn around and ignore it, or we take a left when we should have taken a right. So my challenge as a teacher is to really build a student-centered classroom. And as a language teacher and as someone who's not a native speaker of Spanish, the integration of technology is crucial. I really want to nurture their level of comfort with technology, right? Using things like Flipgrid. It's so easy for them to think about Snapchatting. But then all of a sudden, when you try to introduce Flipgrid, they try to throw chaos into the system because they want to create these weapons of mass confusion. Like all of a sudden, they don't know how to log in or they don't know how to do something. Because in reality, they just don't want to, right? It's easier to Snapchat your friends during class rather than actually use your camera and audio for an effective formative assessment tool like Flipgrid. And I also want to make sure that I'm helping them recognize their fixed mindset voice and help them nurture this fear of failure and to be vulnerable, and then that's okay, and that we're all in this together. And you're not going to execute 100% of the time, but you are going to give your best effort. And if you do that, then there's nothing more that I can ask from you. And so I really want to help them with the four domains and making sure that they hear their mindset voice, that they recognize it, that they make that choice, and that ultimately they take the actions they need to just put forth their best effort. Some of the challenges within that is I fear sometimes overusing technology, or even personally that if my first lesson fails, will I recognize that? Will my fixed mindset voice come out? And will I succumb to that? So I have my own personal challenges to not fall into those same triggers and to recognize my fixed mindset voice when it peaks its head and to immediately put it away with all of the positive self-talk and the positive actions I can take to stay within a growth mindset. So ultimately, how I'm going to do that, and my plan is to be more like when Carol Dweck talked about in her TED talk, or actually her Stanford alumni talk, uh, the school in Chicago that gave out grades of not yet. I really like the concept of using verbiage in my rubrics, and even not necessarily putting assignments into my grade book, um, but giving them feedback of, well, you're not there yet. And I think just some simple steps like using that in the rubrics instead of just using the rubric that comes with the textbook or the text series, I'd like to really manipulate that a little bit and continue to use that verbiage. I really want to praise their effort. I want to praise when they're polite and kind to their classmates when their classmates make a mistake and they immediately talk about a mistake they made, or they find a way to commiserate with them, or to tell them it's okay, right? To promote the continued talking rather than fear of talking because you don't want to sound silly. And that's the challenge with high school population, because now you're in front of your potential prom date and you don't want to sound silly. So that's a challenge at that age group to get them comfortable and build rapport. And that's going to take a lot from day one of just letting them know who I am, my own failures. I often talk about how my Spanish R, and so that's a lesson that when we do the alphabet in the beginning, I talk about just the struggle, and how hard it was for me for years, even into my college years, how I had to stay after and do tongue twisters, and now they see all the success I have and how they hear me speak, in the community with families, and they can't imagine that, sort of what I'll talk about in a little bit, that iceberg analogy. People want to see, they want to believe in the overnight successes. So there is a great TED talk you can see on my slide here, 5 Ways to Kill Your Dreams, and she talks about, that's the first way. Believe in overnight successes. If you want to kill your dreams, believe in overnight successes. Because the reality is there's a lot of hard work. So go back and look at your heroes, like Carol Dweck talks about in her book. Go back and look at your heroes and really find out about them. It may look effortless, but I promise you there's a lot of work going into that. And I think once kids see that and they understand that, it's important. And so I need to also build activities that let them see growth. But it takes time. And we're in a generation of instant gratification. I can escape to a digital universe by reaching in my pocket. And so it's important to curate activity. So one of my favorite things is to do a TED Ed video. Let them pick the topic. There's tons of them, 3 to 4 minute videos in Spanish, and we watch the video completely. Then each subsequent day for the next month or two, we just rewatch it, and then we stop it at another 2 or 3 seconds, and then we replay it, and then we start to see if we hear it, because the goal is to have Spanish stop sounding like Charlie Brown's teacher and to start actually hearing the syllables and those sound patterns, and realize just how phonetic Spanish is, because it works perfectly with our introduction into the Spanish alphabet. So that TED Ed video, by the end, they can really start to hear the individual words, which is pretty powerful. Also like to divide them up in the first quarter. I kind of let them be. I get to know their names. I want to see their natural tendencies and who they go towards. But then after the first quarter, I really want to vary them up into groups based on their varied abilities. Now it promotes collaboration. So I try to have 6 kids in a group, 2 underperforming, 2 mid-range, and 2 higher performing, and they become a team. And then we set goals of growth. So if your team's class average or homework average had gone up from the last time that you took it, rather than one or the other, but they're only fighting the previous version of themselves rather than fighting the other kids in the class. And I think that helps encourage and build off of that growth mindset. Also, the ability to use tools like Flipgrid and VoiceThread can really allow them to see their own personal growth, because the videos that they're going to make August 26th are going to be very different than the ones they make May 26th. And I think that also allows for them to see that growth. It just takes time, and hitting those different domains and helping them nurture that environment, crucial, because as you can see here, success is an iceberg. So really, promoting this thought, letting them see that the risks and persistence and failure is a huge part of getting to that, right? And when we talk about, some of our favorite athletes, I mean, Michael Jordan, I mean, that was the ultimate athlete in my day. And I thought it was supernatural. So as I'm reading chapter 3 in Carol Dweck's book, or I'm sorry, chapter 4, I was super surprised to hear more about Michael Jordan than I had ever known. I knew about the high school team, but just his relentless effort and dedication, even after the NBA Finals, uh, was truly inspirational. And it tells me that that's a lot of the success I'm having in my professional career is because I'm putting in that same amount of effort and dedication. So it's affirming to me that I am on the right track. Right, the same with Tiger Woods. Right, they talk about Carol Dweck and that athlete in sports chapter 4 really talked about the golf swing and how you have to continually be on it and honing your craft. And that's exactly how I feel about teaching. You can't rest on your laurels. Every period, there's a different group of kids, and so now every period, it's a new chess game. But I don't. The pieces are different. She might have been a rook yesterday, but now she's a bishop or a pawn, and I have to understand how they're moving that day. And I can't just rest on my laurels of a lesson that's always worked. It might not work for those particular kids. And then to also stop believing in naturals, right? That's another huge thing, that how important effort and dedication is, instead of just thinking I'm a natural, right? And then also not being a blame thrower, and not, one of the other things in that TED talk on killing your dreams was about to believe that others have the answer, or to blame others. And that's, the story of John McEnroe resonated with me for that same reason, because sometimes we really can get in a place where we blame others and blame external forces for what we really control. So, I think there's a lot of power in that. So I found this unit and this chapter, and especially Carol Dweck's book, super inspirational for me as a teacher, and I hope to create that positive environment for my kids each and every day next year. And then I hope to also do that for my faculty. I'd really love to step up as an educational leader. And so as I think about moving forward, not just my 120 kids in my classroom, but if I could do that with 120 faculty members, then exponentially I'm hitting 16, 1700 kids in our building. And that's the power of that. And I really believe this growth mindset is the track to help us with that. Thank you.